Hi, I'm Godless Engineer and you're watching Atheist Edge.
Well, then what about that is going to go away, is what I'm trying to understand.
The stigma will go away. The words won't.
The stigma around what?
Around things like shit and piss.
To certain words.
I don't think so.
I think you can prove that has been the case.
I think you can lessen it, and certain things are going to become less offensive and less targeted. But I think that it's always going to be the case that certain people and certain ideas are going to be targeted, and people are going to be taken offense by that. People
and ideas are going to be targeted.
Yes.
Things that are universal, like shitting, is not. Everyone's eventually going to get over the idea that people have to go to the bathroom.
I mean,
you can say that in a number of ways, and eventually none of them are any worse than any other.
But Jim's right though, because like, what the hell is the difference between saying shit and poop? There isn't one. But people people think shit is a word you shouldn't use. Have been conditioned. People have been conditioned to think that that's a word you shouldn't use.
What?
Yes, because of the Germanic and Latin.
Not just because
I was about to touch on that.
Not just because of the origins of the word. That's just classist in general, where the highfalutin people who think highly of themselves, we don't use that sort of base street lingo.
You're the lower class if you talk that way. Yes.
The plebs of society might.
They wanted a way to
we would not
distinguish themselves from the lower classes. Yes.
And it's a side note that I was mentioning a minute ago, Jim, is that years ago on the Atheist Experience, Tim Sudo had read a book on the history of the N-word.
Here comes a lot of actual N-words, so get ready, people.
No, there won't be any.
Okay.
I already made the only point I would ever want to make that with that. And it's why I'm saying this as well. So Tim did sort of a book report on this book. And it was written by an African-American. It was about the history of the word. It had some interesting takes on it. There's never been a more awkward and uncomfortable show in the history of the Atheist Experience to have a white guy sitting there doing a book report on this book and saying this word over and over again when it doesn't have anything to do with the Atheist Experience or anything else. It was just a train wreck of awkwardness. And it's one of the reasons that I care about this topic in particular, is because going through how I felt at that point, there are people who have absolutely no kind of twinge or pang of wrongdoing when they toss out the N-word left and right. And there's a difference between when you're directing a word at someone or about someone and then talking about the word. I don't ever have to say the word again because everybody already knows what the N-word is, and that shows specific respect and shows that you're not in any way advocating for somebody, directing it or using it, and that you're at least as understanding as I can possibly be of the impact that it has on people. But doing that show, as much as I look back and I say, gosh, I wish we hadn't done it, it did have an effect of making me and some other people think about these topics even further. And it's the reason why there are other words that I no longer use of my own volition, just because the overwhelming, like I don't say retarded, and I hate when people do creatard or religitard or try to put tard onto any of those, because that's just about the person. It's been used in a demeaning, belittling fashion that is very different from whether or not somebody feels they're too highfalutin to have scatological words, or you shouldn't say fuck, or I'm higher class than this. All of that classist stuff is a problem, but the words that I've essentially scrubbed, apart from when we're in a discussion like this, are all about things that are of no substantive value, that belittle people, and for which another word can be substituted that is not the same sort of soft peddling a concept in the way that gosh darn is of soft peddling, goddamn. There are things that are more accurate and yet more considerate of other people. There are words I just don't need to use because they hinder any progress towards communicating an idea. It's the concept that's important, and as long as you're able to convey the concept in a way where the audience understands, and you're not being a douche about it or advocating for racial bigotry, sexist stuff.
Would you say Christianity retards human progress?
No.
That's a verb. Not a noun.
It's still the same root origin.
That is an accurate statement. It just
means to slow down.
That's like
The
saying
association
But it's not
is
slang.
upsetting to people now, but what that word actually means, retards to slow down, to
Correct.
hinder. That is, I mean, that this material is fire retardant. Like,
Right.
Right.
that's not an upsetting thing.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's really, there are really subtle differences. It's like, nobody would think twice if I said, I have a penis. Well, all right, somebody might think twice, but nobody's going to care. But if I said, I
Somebody
have a
might
cock,
care, but
Yeah.
all of a sudden, ooh, we used a C word, and C words, it's got a hard, he's got a cock, and it takes it in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
When the concept is still the same. And so, just separating the concept from the particular language you use, if I find that there's a justification, that I'm in agreement that there's a justification for somebody being offended, I'm okay with modifying my language in a way that communicates the same concept without causing that. If I find, and this is, I don't think it's too controversial, and yes, it's a little subjective, but if I find that they don't have a good justification for their offense, I'm more likely to use the word.
Yeah.
It's just like, I would have never drawn a picture of Muhammad until Muslims told me I couldn't draw a picture of Muhammad, and I drew it that fucking day.
Exactly.
And I have no desire to burn a flag until somebody tells me I can't, and I'm burning a fucking flag.
Yeah.
I have no desire to, I wouldn't, burning books is just a waste, but, unless you need it for a campfire or something. But the second somebody says, you should really say penis instead of cock, then I'm going to say cock.
Or foul.
Great segue. My second to last question for you guys, Courtney, and TJ, all of you. You're gonna love me for this one.
Oh,
Do you
great.
think? No, you are legitimately. Male comedians are always talking about their cocks and
Okay.
bats an eyelash. Female comedians talk about their vagina a little too much, and everyone goes, "Oh, that's all she talks about is her cooch."
Do they?
Do they?
Do you agree with that, or do you think there's a double standard?
I could do without fucking Dane Cook saying my big fat cock every 5 seconds. I mean,
I've never heard him say that.
I could do without Dane
I
Cook.
could do without Dane Cook.
I could do without
It's a
Dane
good
Cook.
statement.
I could do without Dane Cook.
Okay, I think that female comedians stand out a lot just because there's not very many of them. And so no matter what they say is going to be more scrutinized. And so if you're seeing less material from less people in that demographic, then yes, what they're saying is going to stand out more than, say, the male comedians, who it's a very saturated market. And also what's being said by male comedians is also a very saturated market. Like there's a lot of them are saying a lot of the same things or having the same subject matter. So I don't know. I mean, I think that the idea that women are outspoken and vulgar and saying things that are about their bodies or about sexuality, that's relatively novel, I guess, in terms of like the public figure. And so yes, it stands out more, and there are people who aren't used to that and they would rather women be more ladylike, and I think that's definitely the case. There's a lot of people who want women to behave a certain way, especially on stage, especially as role models. They don't want to normalize the idea of being a slut, but but there's also a very strong movement of like normalizing the idea of being a slut, like having it be not take the meaning out of that and give women sexual freedom. So it's just like there's a lot in there, but it's just that I do think that it stands out more. I don't think that people are necessarily anti-feminist or anti female sexual freedom. I think that they're just not used to seeing it, and I think it's probably just kind of a noise being made that may die down. Well, meaning like I don't think it's an intentional double standard. I think that it just stands out more, that you're not used to seeing somebody like Amy Schumer talk about what she talks about all the time.
It's negatively reinforced in our culture though too for a woman to act like that.
What?
It's negatively received by
the culture by and large does.
In the culture,
does
it's
make
negatively
a problem out of
received.
this.
That needs to go away too, right?
Well, that's what I mean is that I think the reason for that.
There should be a double standard.
There's reasons why. I don't think men should be sluts either.
But I think the reason for that offense
because you're risking the state of your health.
No.
Yeah, you are.
No.
Yes, the more partners you have, the more likely you are to come up with a fucking disease.
Not necessarily.
Are you from Texas? Did you have a Texas sex ed class?
Oh.
Why would you not think? Why would that be a problem?
I don't think that's the case.
Okay, all right. So even if you said that the reason you should not be a slut is because you're risking STDs, you could do what I actually did for a while. I lost a good few partners over this. Demand after a period of time not seeing them, or just on first contact, some kind of proof that they're some kind of medical record. Hey, have you passed a drug test recently? People are ignorant. You know, the kind of thing. Just, you have no STDs right now? Great, let's do that. And also, condoms are effective at stopping STDs. Dental dams exist. I mean, if you really want to be worried about that, there's ways to get around that. Yeah. Entirely. And there are other.
I just think monogamy has benefit.
I think what Connor's saying is that the larger prevention of the spread of disease is education and not number of partners.
Yeah, but also you're not. I mean, it's not helping the situation just by fucking saying, "Hey, just go out and fuck whoever you want."
Yeah, but that mentality
is
I think part of what I'm talking about.
Whole show about just that.
Ugh, I don't like that. Okay, what?
My last question for you guys.
I mean, you can scoff, but 99% of people will agree with my position.
But I don't think so.
I don't think that's accurate either. I think that monogamy is a largely religiously instituted thing that exists on society on the whole, and that more people are emotionally comfortable with it due to things like jealousy and insecurities and a number of societally implanted ideas. Yeah. Yes, that is majority pervasive, but it's 99% is not.
It's the common paradigm.
It is the most common thing, but 99% is not accurate. And I'd say more and more people are becoming aware of non-traditional monogamous relationships that are acceptable. Yeah. And beyond acceptable, actually healthy. So...
Last thing.
We're touching on multiple things at once, but yes.
Everyone in this room, I know, because we don't have a belief system in a deity, statistically we're at least 15 points higher IQ than the average population.
Matt?
Yes? Would you disagree with that?
I'm sorry.
I would disagree with the idea that IQ point means anything.
Now, but I can point at the stats that we are 15 points higher IQ on average than non-believers.
Yeah, so first of all, IQ is bullshit.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it is. I agree with that.
Second of all, my IQ didn't go up after I stopped believing. If anything, from what we know about aging,
that's individual statistic. I'm talking about in general.
Yeah, well, the more important thing is that, among scientific experts, there are far fewer than average who believe in a personal God. So now you're talking about people who have a knowledge and understanding of the way the world works that's greater than average.
Good
because
point.
IQ is not only flawed, basically an IQ test tells you how good you are at taking an IQ test.
Right.
Yeah.
It's okay. Run with me on this then, guys.
Oh gosh. How many times have you said that?
We're all smart people. If we decide to cuss, if we pepper our language with lots of cuss words, does that make us less eloquent in our speech?
No.
Does that limit someone's vocabulary?
No.
That's my question.
I just saw a study that said people with higher IQ tend to cuss more frequently.
Yep. And people who are more honest.
Is that right?
Yeah, I saw a study a couple. Yeah.
People who are more honest tend to cuss more frequently too. Now, I'd say if you become,
I don't know that either.
Yeah, there's studies on that. If you rely on any word, cuss word or otherwise, then your vocabulary is going to become limited. It's like atrophy. If you don't use a certain muscle for anything ever, it's going to get weaker. But if I decide to throw really complex multisyllabic words around just as often as fuck and ass, then, and I can even mix them together, I can throw fuck right in the middle of whatever word I want.
Yeah, I'm always used to say that it showed a lack of vocabulary. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that the result of having more cuss words in your language is telling you the most. I think it's more about the reason behind why you're doing that. If you're doing that because you don't have a very large vocabulary and it takes up a lot of your vocabulary just because of the lack of variety in your vocabulary, then that would be suggestive of that. But if you're using it as a very poignant way of using flowery language and like Connor was saying, adding in more intellectual ideas and complex words and phrases, then that's suggestive of more intelligence. But like,
I'd say even the negative perception on using swear words regularly in day-to-day speak is probably going back to what Matt was talking about with classism. Just people thinking, well, I'm better than you because I don't say this. And if you think about that, saying, well, all these words, you can't say those, and therefore you're better and your vocabulary is better because you've deleted words from your vocabulary is
right.
A pretty silly idea.
Yeah.
On its face, I refuse to say all these words I know, therefore my vocabulary is better?
That distinguishes me from
I will edit this out. I already know the answer to it. That you're Arnroth's biological son. You don't want anyone to know that, yes?
That's fine. That's
really?
Fine. Yeah, no, here, that's fine.
Because this...
For the conversation we were talking about earlier,
this type of wit is
gotta be
fucking genetic. That's genetic.
Yeah, I love this guy.
Either that or it's environmental and you've just been living around him for so long.
You know, it's actually weird about that.
Correct. I've spent genetic or environmental.
Yeah.
Has to be one or the other.
It's one or the other.
And it's probably a little column A and a little column B.
Exactly. It is a little column A and a little column B. I've spent large portions of my life nowhere near him, and in some of the portions of my life where I was nowhere near him, people were like, "You are exactly your father," and sometimes they said that as a like, "Fuck you, you're your father," and sometimes they said that as a, You're your father. But either way, they said the same thing.
Hey, you're your own person. You wear it as a badge of honor however you feel like it, right?
Yeah.
You are your own person. There you go.
Well, I'm not
sure.
To
sum up, let's put a bow on it.
I'm not sure where Jim was going with this, which is frequently the case.
We were just talking all. It was just an entire show that's basically one large tangent.
It's a very offensive tangent.
Yeah.
Tangent considered.
I think so a good point to end this on would be that just don't make it your intention to go around saying the most inflammatory things you can to people to upset them.
Yeah,
don't be a dick.
Just because you can. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I think the more that you recognize and educate yourself on the power of language and the power that it has to not only offend people but subjugate people and make them feel smaller.
That's a good point.
That type of awareness just makes you a better world citizen anyway. But there is like there's such a polarizing idea, like we were talking about with gun control, like that you're either one or the other. You're either like everything is fine with speech and like you shouldn't be offended by anything and we can say whatever the fuck they want.
Say whatever.
And like, policing speech and having everyone be very censored with what they say out of fear of offending anybody. And I think that there's a middle ground with that that's not really talked about very much.
I don't even think you can describe it as a middle ground.
I don't even think
it's just because it's so individual dependent, you know? Every person that you talk to is going to feel differently, and I think part of this whole like offensive speech thing is being so exacerbated by just the fact that the internet exists.
Right.
Yeah.
You say one thing, and it's no longer a matter of, hey, I know you, I know how you think, I know what's upsetting to you.
Absolutely.
It's a matter of, fucking Joe Bob I've never seen before might see this, and he's gonna get really mad that I said that thing.
Yeah. I do have a problem personally with like having a. Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, that was really it. I mean, anyone listening to that and really connecting with that's going to get where that train of thought's going, so don't worry about it.
To expand on what you said about offense, though, is that, like Jim, I go farther than Jim. Jim says offense can only be taken and never given. I think there is some truth to that. I think the person receiving the language in their ear hole doesn't necessarily have control over whether or not they're offended either.
Right.
So offense just happens. I don't think it's taken or given.
Well,
you know what I'm saying? It happens because someone says something, and then it would that person's natural reaction to be offended. Oh. So it's not like they're saying, "Hey, I'm going to attempt."
For the offense.
Right.
So
You can't help how you initially feel.
Right, you can't help what feelings or thoughts arise in your brain.
But you can train yourself such that you're no longer offended by things or react
Right.
in a way.
Or treat the sensation when it comes and let it go.
Yeah, there are things
Right.
that used to offend me that no longer offend me.
Right. Or they may still.
They don't.
They may. Well, I'm sure that there are words though in existence though that might at one time have given you a pang, and it still gives you that pang, but you don't react to it the same way anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Possibly.
It still might
most
give
of
you the
them
same
might.
feeling inside, but you've learned to do something else with that feeling instead of what you used to do with it. You know, you might have gotten angry before, but now you like, oh, I've heard that before, so now I'm just, yeah, I get that feeling inside me, but you know, I'm gonna do this instead. You know, but
brief aside on that thing, what I mentioned earlier, that's very much an OODA loop, you know, observe, orient, decide, act. But the fact that,
How do you know that?
you know how I know that. We'll talk about that later. But
I don't know what a noodle loop is, do you, Courtney? It's a very military
I
thing.
don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about that later.
Noodle loop?
OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. And that's how you interact with people combatively, obviously, but it is also how you interact with people communication-wise.
Yeah.
You know, as Matt, you're a public speaker. I'm sure you understand that, you know, knowing the audience you're talking to, knowing how they're going to feel about things, is an important part of the job.
Yeah.
Observing,
Yeah.
orienting yourself to the audience that you're speaking to, then deciding what and how you're going to say it, and saying it. And when you're dealing with the internet, you can't observe. You can't observe who you're talking to. You can't orient to them.
Yes.
So there's this disconnect that you're going to run into. Everyone
And
is
no
just
tone.
kind of it's like everyone's on islands just throwing out bottles into the ocean, and
and the receiver is usually going to generally ascribe the tone
exactly
that they want,
and
not the
there's nothing
not
you can
always
do
the
about
actual
that.
tone.
There's nothing you can do
You
about
can't
that.
convey intent or tone over text.
Yeah, and there is a complaint online of people having to couple what they're saying with a lot of caveats before they come out and say that. But I think there is something to be said for the amount of clarity that produces. Like whether or not you're saying that because you're afraid of offending someone or you're afraid of being taken out of context, I think there is something to be said for doing that anyway, just so that you are actually clear. And so that you're not allowing people to just add on to what you're saying.
So final thought, cussing is dumb. Or not.
What?
Either way.
I disagree. Cussing
No.
is great. Just be creative about it. Use a big vocabulary. You know, you want to say that you went to a concert. Say I went to a fucking concert if you want to. Or if you want to say that you went to an otolaryngology. I can't even say it.
Audio.
Somebody help me.
Auditory.
No. Otolaryngologist, something like it. Just throw fucking in there somewhere. Have fun.
Or just use it as every word in the sentence. Fuck the fucking fuckers.
I'm disestablishment fucking Tarianism.
I went to an
Have fun.
orgasmic experience. Auditory orgasmic experience. There you go.
All right.
Otolaryngologist.
All right, that was the bit on cussing, and so hit the like the video and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you stay up to date on all.
Definitely a conversation worth having.
All future episodes.
And we've had a very special guest on today.
Yeah, we have
Connor,
and
thanks for being with us.
You have any plugs?
No.
Do you have anything
No
going
plug.
on with women deconversion or anything, or?
We're still plugging along.
And that's every first Monday?
The first Monday of every month. So we just had our most recent one, which was it's always a very interesting conversation, but I love those ladies.
First Monday of every month, women deconversion.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could say check out Aaron Ra.
And Matt Dillahunty.
And I'm TJ.
He was here too, Matt
Courtney.
Dillahunty.
And this is Atheist Edge. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.